Hi everyone. So I'm just gonna do the whole review on the discussion, debate, whatever you want to call it, with Singh. There was just a couple of things that I think needed to be talked about and went through regarding what he has said. So let's go.
How we have a better perspective. But Singaporeans
Are quite far from that, right?
are quite far from that.
What do
Yes.
you think about people with dangerous views? Do you think they should be allowed to spread ideas and influence without any repercussion?
Now, it is about how
So one of the reasons why I asked him that question, right, was I was actually kind of alluding to what he is doing, the whole COVID thing. Most of my questions that I lined up were actually planned that way. So
we deal with people we feel that is dangerous with dangerous view. If you are going to lock up people with dangerous view, it's called speech crime. You are actually locking up people just because of their thoughts, right? If you consider a person who believes in the aliens, for example, and the aliens are the god or the aliens are coming to invade, and you regard him as some dangerous view because he incite fear.
see, but the even the example he gave was quite bad, right? Because honestly, how dangerous could that be to society? If someone just creates fear in that way, the end outcome is what people are just gonna question if aliens exist. But on the other hand, if you're talking about someone like Singh, where he's out there spreading propaganda, spreading like misinformation and lies about the vaccine, how much harm could that do? Deaths, injuries.
Panic among the population. Do you lock him up? Or do you have reasons to reason it out?
Let's speed up a bit.
And it will result that majority of people will not.
What about people like Amos Yee, who are pedophiles and who are trying to normalize that having sexual contact with children is acceptable and that we are not evolved as a society to.
We are talking about encourage people to kill each other, right? How do you deal with it? Now you have to assess how many people will follow him.
Like
To
ISIS, for
believe in
example.
that
Like ISIS,
Amos Yee,
yeah.
right? How many people will actually ISIS, for example, ISIS, right? ISIS, for example,
Yeah.
right? To kill for the religion,
Yeah.
right? So in certain society, right? In certain society, that actually because of the low majority, low education system, or rather the fundamentalists of the religious fanaticism teaching, people may buy into it.
Very vulnerable, yes. Agree.
Very vulnerable. But in our society, there will still be people who actually will believe in it.
Yes.
Right.
I believe that day there was one Bangladeshi worker that was arrested in Singapore because of this as well. This recently, last week.
Correct. But normally Singaporeans are not that extreme, right? But there will be possibility for people to do it.
Definitely. Yeah.
So to us, if this is a minority, right, we can actually use.
I think the whole argument on how many people does it affect by itself isn't very good because you never know how many people this is going to spread to, right? For instance, if we have someone who has only like what 5 friends and he spreads this message of misinformation or harm to his friends, it could potentially be something massive where if you look at WhatsApp chats, in your uncle and auntie group chats where they spread misinformation about, like, I think in the past there was many lies and things that were spread around lockdown measures in Singapore during the height of the COVID pandemic, right? So stuff like that. Yeah, your auntie's group may only have like 5 people, but what could the implications lie within that 5 people? Could it be spread to 1,000 people, 1 million people? So it doesn't really matter how many people it impacts, because there's always that lingering effect that could always spiral out of control. So we should just go off with the basis that if the person is just spreading lies by itself, then there should be something to be dealt with. It doesn't matter how many people that is impacted.
More of a moderate reasoning for the public to believe that this is actually not the way to go. Correct? If it fails, well, re-education of a person is actually very difficult. I can tell you, it's very difficult. When your mind is set to certain things, when you cross a certain age, you cannot change your mindset. Right? So, well, as long as he can have that thought, but he doesn't carry through into actions that will actually affect our society or causing harm to our society, it's just a thought.
But I guess the problem is quite hard to justify when it is a sort of hint for people to do something, or the influence. Like, for example, if they share an idea but they don't actually do it, if they say something like, or if I can give you an example of the January 6th inauguration, Donald Trump, he was quite insightful with his words and to his followers, to the point where they actually broke into the Capitol to do all of those things to kind of like, it was a very dark day for democracy on the day. They tried to overthrow everything and tried to, in their mind, I believe that the whole election was rigged, right? Which was not entirely based on facts at all. So do you not feel that even though Donald Trump didn't specifically ask anyone to do anything, just him spreading the idea that his election was fake and that he would be thrown out of the presidency because of this, would there not be sort of like a cause for action?
No, we have to be very careful here. When a politician goes into an election and he feels that the election is rigged, right? In America, you can say that Donald Trump is incitement of violence, right? But what happened? It happens in places like Myanmar.
So just mental gymnastics 101. So what about this? What about it? What about it? It doesn't really answer any of my questions at all. And it's, if you see, right, it's becoming it becomes a very overarching theme in this whole discussion. It just takes things out of context to assert that something doesn't work, vaccine doesn't work, this doesn't work. And then when you press him on it, he's like, oh, what about this, what about that, what about this and what about that? And he just using a lot of distractions, using a lot of examples to kind of bring it off the point that you were talking of. But I can see through all the BS. But anyway, I just entertained it and I went to the whole thing. So,
right? When the Democrats out there say that, do you think it's justifiable to say that she incites violence?
I think because
I mean, obviously, we all know that the results were obviously faked, right? But in America, they have a proper judicial, proper political polling system, or at least you're supposed to believe that that is the case, and that's really just the main difference. If the results were so openly protested, right? They were openly protested in Myanmar for a very good reason, because why would people just not like just take this L sitting down? They obviously know that the whole government is corrupted. Why shouldn't they have their say? Whereas in America, you have all these due processes set up in place. There's a more democratic way to go about solving these situations. Later on, Goh Singh talks about Myanmar has these democratic processes too, where you can go through the court system and appeal. But obviously, if the whole court system and the whole country is ran by the junta themselves, there's going to be a clash of interest, right? So even, yeah, sure, you can appeal, but they'll just throw your appeal. So it's weird that he tried to make this comparison to a whole different country with very, very different contexts.
On her circumstances, it is much more believable. Whereas Donald Trump tried to have a lawsuit and he failed both times in Supreme Court and he was rejected. Like I think
Yes.
even his lawyer kind of gave up on his case as well.
Well, but they actually can have a lawsuit in Myanmar also. But whether you believe the judgment also. So it's still back to perception. You feel that in one place it can be done that, in the other place you don't accept it to be done because of perception that America should be a federal judiciary or a federal system. Right? That's a perception.
I would condemn both actions, but then I would be able to understand why in Myanmar they would kind of because it's literally a military dictatorship, whereas the US is a supposed democracy. So based on that premise, then I would be able to see like, okay, like his actions were totally wrong and should be condemned for. Like he's sort of dog whistling to his supporters in that sense. That's just it's quite inexcusable. Like I find a good reason why I'd be in support of even if you feel that he was raped.
It actually reminds me of a debate that I always have about dictatorship or authoritarian system. Right? Singapore is an authoritarian system.
Yeah.
Still people vote.
See, like I no idea why. Okay, so he lost on the Myanmar point, and then now he has to pivot away. He lost on the Myanmar point, and now he has to pivot away to talking about things in Singapore and things about the political system. There's no real relevance to what my question was that, was he wrong for doing that? Should he be punished for doing that? It's a very simple question.
Have anyone said that it cannot be trusted, or if any opposition party member say that election is rigged, believable or unbelievable? That's number one. Right? The other debate I have is actually about China. Right? A lot of people say, oh, China is a dictatorship. No? It is put to election, the CCP will lose. But I can tell you, when you go to China, you talk to most of the people, you take a poll, right, secret poll, right, a lot of people actually supported the CCP.
Yeah, I mean, those polls, I think that he's referencing are mostly government-ran polls, so obviously they would kind of... do you really trust... I mean...
They wanted that dictatorship. Right? For what reasons? It's for actually nationalistic and national pride reason. Because to them is in no other instances in history, China can be so strong. And they believe that it is CCP which have brought them to this stage. Right? But for Democrats like us, you see, bullshit, they are dictator, they should be the bad guys. And they will be overthrown very easily. Right? But it's not true in China. You see, there's a cultural difference in people's thinking. Right? So even in Myanmar, I could not discount the fact that there are people who supported the military. Why? Because people who wanted stability.
Yeah, but who cares if a group of people supports the military or not? That doesn't give them the right to mess up the whole democratic processes of election like that, right?
Right. And people who are neo-Nazis, or rather, I would say that racist against the Muslim, they supported the military to actually victimize the smaller minority groups. But is that the gauge that we use, whether people support or not, to do what is right or wrong? So it is when we go into into understanding cultural differences and how culture actually can change, or rather make difference in the belief whether democracy is good or not, is actually quite shocking. Because I have been to China. Of course, they will talk about the corruption they don't like and all that. But when I ask them, do you hate CCP? They tell you straight no. Will you support CCP? They will say yes, in spite of all the corruption. Because to them, the corruption is an individual official's problem. But in terms of the country's status, without CCP, they do not think that they can keep the whole country intact. They will break into pieces.
Brainwash.
So they are very multidimensional of how we perceive and how very different the ground people will actually think. So and a lot of people talk about this now, coming for debates in the internet. They are paid and all that. I can tell you, a lot of them are not paid. They actually did it on their own. Even in Singapore, we have a substantial number of people from China, new citizens or new migrants, economic migrants. We talk to them. They are very proud of CCP. Right? Something that we cannot understand as a person who are so believe in checks and balances, democracy, and we cannot understand. So yet again, I have to caution, when you place a judgment call, who to believe and who not to believe, I think we have to place a context into the cultural setting and the people. Because if you believe the government is for the people, then you must believe what the people thinks, what their people think matters, not us. So as for Donald Trump, right, he has his followings definitely he has his followings, right? He might think, because we are not on the ground in US to actually understand the electoral processes, right? The mail-in, the system of mail-in voting, and how it can be rigged or gamed. The system of voting, we are not clear. So I would refrain from making judgment about it, because politicians will have their rhetorics. They would say what is beneficial to them. But for us, if we are really interested in the truth, we will have to look at the truth, the matters, and examine whether the whole electoral system, whether it's flawed, with flaws inside. Of course, I'm not supporting Donald Trump. I think it's a good thing that he's being voted out. But to me, it's we have to be very clear. He has his right to claim what he believes, that the election has been rigged. Of course, we will also respect the judges.
Yep.
But the judges are quite politicized also. As you have known, how they appoint the federal judges, it depends on whether it's the Democrats or the Republican. Very few neutrals. So again, no system is perfect. But as long as we believe that there's enough checks and balances, the institutional separation of power is installed, I think we have to take it as Donald Trump talking nonsense. Or whether he's talking nonsense is an attempt to incite violence for it to happen on the riot, no? That is another matter after all. If you want to link that and say he should be jailed for that, I think that's a bit far off. Okay?
Even if the lawsuits came back and then it was dismissed by the courts that, he had no basis to make this claim and that he was spreading dangerous information, do you not feel that he should be accountable for the things that happened on January 6th? Or he should be stopped?
You see, in Singapore, it's the same. When the opposition or activists being charged in court found guilty, right, doesn't mean that we have to believe that he's really guilty.
For the sake of the argument, let's say it is established that he was really just talking off his ass, that he was rigged in this election, and that he was just maybe sulking over his loss to Joe Biden.
Yes. He can make his... No, okay. Now, a judge can make his judgment. We cannot say he's biased or not, because that will be a contempt of court. Right? But for us, we can actually say we disagree with the judgment. Based on what? He still put up his logic. Whether you believe or not, right, that's another matter. But are you really saying that we should actually deprive him of that right of making his view that he disagrees with the judgment or disagree with the judges?
I think with his power and influence, he should have been more careful with his words, because it has been not like one time or two times, there have been a couple of tweets and a couple of videos where he was kind of dog whistling to his fan base, saying that we must take actions into our own hands, and there was correspondence like that. Where
yes. Well, no, that's precisely right. If he actually says that means he says, you must take in your own hands to do something about it, right? That is incitement of violence.
You can pause it.
But he just say that, go and write to your legislators and all that to complain of that. That is not an incitement of violence. It depends very well on what he said. Right? But if he did not ask people to go and kill people or go for riot, but people actually misinterpret it or take it in their own hands, then it's a very different thing. So in law, in all fairness, in law, if you want to say that he's guilty of something.
Law though, what about the law though? What did the law say though? See, so at the end of it, he still isn't answering my question at all. He says, okay, if it's not an unbroken law, or if it's not in the law, it's a grey area, then whatever goes. But it's not ideal, is it?
Right.
And my question was, does it make it right? Should we do something about it, even if it's not in the law? Like, for instance, leaking someone's nudes was probably not in the law before, but we as a society know whether that's right or wrong to do, right?
It must have a very direct link, right? But you cannot deprive him of the right to say that he believes the judgment is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in legal terms, that means he still can say the judgment is wrong. He still can say that the judges is wrong. But he cannot say the judge is biased, because that would be a contempt of court. So there's a very clear line where to draw. Whether you think that what he's doing is actually, you can say that what he's doing is wrong, right? But you cannot say that we must use the law to shut him up.
So where would the responsibility lie, in your opinion? Do you think it should be with the individual who is misinterpreting what he's saying, or do you think it's with the person who comes out to say it and spread the ideas? Because the people who were at the riots themselves were saying that this is what Donald Trump told me to do. So how would you kind of put who should be responsible for this and who should be
he said, if a person said Donald Trump tell you to do, but did Donald Trump actually tell you to go and chong the capital hill?
So yeah, that is there was no specific instruction. So it's very open to interpretation, right?
Yes. So as a judge, when you go to court, the lawyers ask, what exactly did Donald Trump tell you to do, right? And the court will come to the conclusion that actually Donald Trump didn't tell you to chong the capital hill. It is you who took the initiative, right? It's very difficult to actually pinpoint on the responsibility of that, right? And you are the one who actually chong and create trouble and accuse people, then you have to be responsible for it, right? So, I think Donald Trump is people who are legally trained will use a loophole. They know where the line is drawn, right? They know exactly where the line is drawn. They will never cross a line. But it can be so gray area that he knows that people will actually interpret what he said in certain ways.
Yeah.
Not all, but some people interpret, right? The fanatics. But yet the law cannot touch him. Because law is very specific, man. What you say, is what you say. What people think is what people think. You cannot tell people not to think that way.
Correct. Which is, I guess, my question, if I could rephrase, is like, I understand that the law kind of is more protective of him in this case rather than to actually penalize anything specific that he said. But do you think there should be certain things that could maybe put in place to curb such things from happening again? Or do you think that anyone should say anything that they want? Any idea is fine. Neo-Nazism, pedophilia, religion can be talked about, can be shared, can be expressed. And people who buy into those ideas, maybe the less educated, who actually believe that, oh yes, we should be a Nazi, we should be racist, blah, blah, blah. Do you think, for ideal society to function, do you not see any like?
The ideal society to function is for the silent majority to make noise. If somebody have a neo-Nazism idea that keep talking about it, keep spreading it, and those who disagree do not want to come to and debunk it, to go against it, say you are wrong, and less people are talking about it, but you let the small minority to actually carry out their so-called spreading this idea, actually, you'll come to a breaking point. So in a mature society, people should not keep quiet. Right? Of course, the easiest way is actually use the law and just cut it off. But if you do that, there are costs to the society. Because when a government start to enjoy such power, such power will be abused. Right? They can use the same logic again and again, right? To curb. It's just like POFMA, No? It's just like POFMA. POFMA.
See, it's quite funny when you brought it up, because it's exactly what I wanted to talk about regarding his POFMA and regarding his abuse of free speech.
It's supposed to be about the truth, right? That means you want to curb the truth, the people falsehood. You can only say people are not telling the truth if and only if you know the truth, correct?
Yeah.
If you do not know the truth, how will you know what is the fake or the falsehood? A lot of times, position keeps shifting and changing until that you do not even need to explain you know the truth, but you just say that what I say is the truth. And that is exactly what POFMA is about. And that's exactly what the fact checker are doing, so-called in Facebook. They are supposed to fact check, right? But fact check, you must know the truth first. But they are actually attacking on opinions. They are actually attacking on what people believe is the truth when nobody knows what the truth. So when you have this little power that you set in, when you enjoy the power is a very addictive thing. When you enjoy the power, it becomes so addictive that you start to manipulate a bit, shifting the position a bit, and you start to shut everybody out. So you must be very careful each and every time that we want to set a law that says, okay, if people say this, we lock them out in ISA. Is that the only way? That is not the only way. I do not think that is the only way. Why? If you have a mature society, where most people are actually educated, have a basic education, right? A basic faculty of logic and reasoning, and in fact, a conservative society. When somebody talk rubbish, more people come out and calm him, right? That will die off. The danger is when the majority becomes silent. They don't want to. Don't bother. He's talk rubbish, but I don't bother. I don't want to debunk it, or I don't want to debate. And that is where you allow all these ideas, dangerous ideas, to actually grow. So you have to choose whether you want a vibrant democracy, a vibrant society that actually constantly debate and get consensus, or.
So the thing about this whole idea that debate will solve everything, right? I used to believe that wholeheartedly. That's why I'm a big fan of open discussions, anyone saying anything they want, free speech. But then there comes a point, right, where it's not so simple. I think it's super oversimplified to say that the debate will solve everything. Take this whole entire video, this whole entire discussion by itself. I don't think it will convince most people in their positions who are already at both extremes. One, and two is that, yeah, sure, you might recruit some new people into your camp after you've seen who has the better arguments. Yours truly. But with the whole thing, right, of this debate will solve everything, it doesn't really change much in my opinion, because a lot of normies or people who are ignorant, people who aren't too versed on the subject, right, as you would see in the comment, that I screenshotted as well, people actually listening and not knowing so much on this subject matter, not being challenged on it before, not having a lot of skin in the game, not having a wider perspective of how things work, may look up to Goh Sing after this interview. Even though he comes off very weak and he comes off he basically took this whole thing lying down, in my opinion. Like, he wasn't very brash with his words. There was no aggression. Where was the ego, and where was the whole confidence that he had in saying that the vaccine doesn't work? In this video, he was so humble. He was not making any of those claims. He sort of backed away, sort of saying, "Oh, this is just my opinions." He doesn't provide any data, any statistics, even though he's a very data and statistic driven person, right? So it's just at the end of it, right, I think you really need to have a certain law that comes in, where you can be held. You should have consequences for your freedom of speech. Okay, you go to law. If you're able to debate it and you're able to have statistical backings and evidence to what you're saying, then yeah, sure, you could be cleared of all your charges. It doesn't mean that just because we have a law that wants to minimize misinformation or the lies that spread out there in the world means the government is trying to clamp down on everything. Because I think there should still be due processes set up in the judicial system to ensure that there is fairness across the board, and that at least, right, with this we are able to kind of publicize that, yes, look, this guy who made such claims online or whatever is confident, right, and is so confident that he goes to court over it, and he won his case. Look, so then there we have established more credibility. Or even, right, if Goh Sing really feels that the government or the vaccine companies are in some massive conspiratorial fantasy thing where everyone's collaborating and all the world government is just forcing us this vaccine that doesn't work, or it's nonsense or whatever, then he should be the one taking up his case to go forth in having a lawsuit with the government, having a lawsuit with MOH, having a lawsuit with all these companies. But the fact that he doesn't, right, just shows how much this whole we will just debate the ideas for fun it's just really just a waste of time. Doesn't really serve anyone, and you could just you could just wrongly influence the random innocent people who are just not having too much in the game, or not knowing too much about the subject matter, and being like, oh yeah, you know what, Goh Sing makes a lot of sense.
You want to leave such thing to the power that be, to use whatever power to set any legislation just to shut anyone out. I don't need to. I just remain silent. No, the government know what to do. So there is a cost. I believe we actually cost the thing. Singaporeans are just okay, set the law with support, because the majority are mostly silent. Nobody is interested in having a good debate. Nobody have an interest to actually re-enhance our belief, our core values, or what is permissible and what is not permissible. I would rather have a society with people who are just like US. You say Donald Trump talking rubbish, immediately people will come and hunt him. Right? If Donald Trump is in Singapore, nobody is suddenly you wait for PAP to actually shut him up. It's a totally different type of social structure that I want. You see? But it's actually a very delicate balance. If I'm in power, I also go in, because Singaporeans are too silent. They just let things happen silently. If they base song, they also silent. Right? So I'm forced to be like PAP. Okay lah. I just use a big hammer to smash the little fly. And that's exactly what PAP is doing. So there's no right or wrong. Right? Of course, we are in this system, we always think that we must get the government to do something. Actually, we can do a lot of things. We ourselves can do a lot of things by raising our voice, by enhancing our core values through debates, to robust debates, and come to understanding that this is not permissible. And these minorities, extreme views will actually die off from society. Because they know that once they talk, it's not about the secret police will come. You'll be harmed straight away. Right? That's my view. Right? That's how I look at freedom of expression. Yeah.
For things that are sort of more clear-cut, like for example, if someone wants to say 1 + 1 is 3, right? In that case, you think that they should be off mark?
They should be laughed at, not off mark. If it's too silly, you don't even need to off mark. Nobody will actually believe it.
Yeah. I guess that's where the danger lies when something more complicated, where people don't really understand certain things. For example, viruses, COVID, or religion, economics. Bitcoin, for example, a lot of people have been falling for a lot of Bitcoin scams because people have been thinking about it. So things like that, do you think that we should actually enforce a certain system where people cannot just, any Tom, Dick and Harry can just say that they're expert on this or comment or give their prescriptive advice? So not only just to give their opinion, but they say you must buy this or you must, this cure cancer, for example, and then they are selling a fake product, for instance.
Okay, we actually have a system of in terms of health. Okay, you are talking about Bitcoin, that's scam, right? Scam is actually a criminal offense. That means you are talking about falsehood to make money, right? And the law can deal with that. It is a scam, just like a scam of a fake call and all that. It's no longer about freedom of expression. I put it very clearly, scamming.
But maybe to that person who is selling that product, they truly believe it in themselves. And then he's just saying, I'm just expressing my opinion. Just because there's money involved doesn't mean I'm trying to scam people. But maybe the thing that he's selling, right, is really nonsense. Like he's saying, you buy this rock, you can cure cancer, for example. But he himself really believes it. And he's saying, oh, this is just my opinion. Why are you using a law to shut me down? He can use your argument to back up his sort of position in this case. Don't you think so?
Now, in terms of cure, there is always, as a statistic person, show me the statistics. Very simple. Right? We have...
Also, not everything that, that you're saying out there needs to have a statistic, right? Like, if you say something like, you saw an alien today, a blue alien, what statistic are you gonna pull up? Where you're gonna Google aliens blue? No, some rely on just first-hand accounts, right? So especially with Gomeng Singh, where he gives so much first-hand accounts, so many first-hand accounts. I have this friend who took the vaccine and then now he's paralyzed. I have this friend who took the vaccine and now he's dead. I have this friend who take the vaccine and then he grew 10 cm in height and now he has cancer. Or I don't know, like whatever nonsense he has, he doesn't base his off statistics as well, which was quite a hypocritical point that he made. And in regards to, if he was to agree that the scam or the consequence of misusing your freedom of speech, right, was bad, then he, logically speaking, should then be also of the same camp that if you abuse your freedom of speech and it leads to XXX consequence, then you should be punished and that should also be a crime. But he just doesn't want to admit it because he knows that if he says that, then it goes entirely against what he has been doing all this while.
Build a system of randomized control trial.
Yep.
So-called science. The tools of science. Right? But you make the claim, you show me the data. Very simple. If it's not with that claim, then you do not have data. Okay? Like this one. But data also have its flaws.
Can be faked, yeah.
Because in real life, it's very difficult to have randomized data, fully randomized data. In fact, I would say that whatever data nowadays, when you see people put up and try to make a conclusion out of it, even with data, it's wrong.
See, that's quite funny because this is coming from someone who has cherry-picked, taken out of context, and abused actual legit statistics or actual legit randomized control trials out there. So it's very hard to kind of win with this person, right? Because even though he's like he may quote some statistics and it's all just inaccurate, and the way he interprets the statistics is just to fit his narrative. So
right? Because by virtue that only randomized controlled trial can actually give you a fuller picture, right? For real world data, normally it actually involves selection bias. Selection bias means what? For example, if I feel that I'm very weak, right, I should not take the jab, right, for the vaccine. Then I will not take because I'm afraid that I will die. Because I see a lot of data that comes in the real world data, a lot of vaccine injuries. Whether it's really correlated or causation, pure coincidence, correlated or correlated, but I have a belief that these people always come out already. People say, because of your pre-existing condition and all that. I have pre-existing condition, so I do not want to be part of that statistics. So I decided not to take. Right? But when I have infection, by virtue because of my pre-existing condition, I went to the ICU. Because of this selection bias, I base my decision based on my understanding of my own body. Right? I become a statistics to say, you see, I'm vexed, we'll go to ICU. If about 90% of those who refuse to take the jab are people who consider themselves with pre-existing condition, that's why they do not want to take the jab. Would you expect more of these people who are vexed to go to ICU? Natural, because all those who have serious illness, serious condition after being infected are those with pre-existing conditions. Whether you're vexed or unvexed all are pre-existing conditions. So when people try to present the data without giving the context of the data, to say that, actually, in the unvexed group, 90% of them have pre-existing condition. Without this context, you come to conclusion, you are unvexed, you are more dangerous. That is actually biased, flawed. So even with data, it's not a full thing that you can come to a fair conclusion,
Oh, yeah.
Because randomized control trial is, strictly speaking, it must be done in a very strict form, right? But people are just plucking data from real world data and treat it as just as a randomized data. Just make it look like it's a randomized trial data. To come to that conclusion, I think we must be very careful about that.
So actually, you brought stuff that I also want to talk about later on. But if you go back to about POFMA, and for example, I think you were also issued one. I think
I issued three. Okay.
Three. Yeah.
One have nothing to do with me. As I
he damn proud. He damn proud. He got both.
the first one is someone was talking about
Three. Okay.
vaccine injuries. Right, vaccine injuries. At that point of time, what the PAP believe, whether it's fact or not, is nobody knows. Right? You believe that the vaccine is safe, and all those injuries reported are pure coincidence. It's due to the pre-existing condition of those people. You die of heart attack after you take the jab, even the next day or 1 week later, you got nothing to do with the vaccine. Right? They can only say that there is no evidence to prove that the death or the injury is caused by the vaccine.
Sure.
But no evidence to prove doesn't mean that it is not the case. You must be very careful about that. Right? So this guy who wrote about all this, to use the world data on vaccine injuries, or how many thousands of people, 100,000 of people have serious injuries and all that. Right? He was comma, I was comma.
Are you referring to the VAERS in America? Is it that one he was using?
Verse, not only verse. Not only verse. The European have the system also, right? The yellow card system in Britain.
Yeah, but just to add a little side note, right? The verse is exactly entirely patient-reported outcomes. So that means the patient, right? And if you know how much of like how the American healthcare system works, so expensive, so horrible. If you don't have insurance, you're dead. So if you have to come and keng, right, or you have to kind of fake an illness, or you just blame anything on the vaccines, you can get off scot-free, So a lot of people, they will kind of report whatever side effects that they have, whether it's actually due to the vaccine or because you could have like a reaction maybe like weeks after the vaccine or whatever, and you could just report it as that, and your insurance will still cover you under the same thing. And then if let's say you do feel that the vaccine probably could have caused this side effect, whether it makes sense or not, the doctors will just they won't even argue with you. They will just record it down, just as sort of like a safety feature in this sort of reporting to track the number of cases and to see whether the incidence rates at the time increase for this condition, like Bell's palsy, like this and that, and yeah, it's not entirely accurate because people have been, been known to fake all their illnesses for coverage, or just it's basically filled with a lot of biases and there's no control measures. You're just basically taking people's word for it, right?
Right? That's why the European system, there were another reporting system. Right? There are many. Now, recently, due to the Freedom of Information Act, right, thanks to that, FDA in America was forced to present all the documents that was given to them by Pfizer, right? And even Pfizer recognized that there are 1,291 types of side effects of concern after taking the vaccine. This is written by Pfizer, no, not us, not anyone else. Right? They come to the conclusion there's a concern. These are the concerns. Whole 8 pages, 9 pages of it. Right? So I ask you whether the POFMA issue last year still stands.
I have to look at exactly what they are targeting you for, because I'm
Honestly, I had no idea what his other POFMA was talking about. I had no time to read up about. There's so many things that I have to read about, and I just focus mostly on the one that was the most, I guess, outstanding, which was the one where he shared this video regarding like how COVID evolved from HIV, or evolved to combine with HIV into this new virus or something like that. And I'm just like, what the fuck? So that was the thing that really caught my eye. I didn't know about his other 2 POFMAs, which is why I only thought he had 1 when he corrected me, or he actually has 3, and then we began talking about that. So I only spoke about the ones that I knew, right?
quite clear on only one of the charge, which was I think you reshared this video on Facebook regarding how the Omicron is a mix between HIV and COVID or something like that.
No, okay. That one, I think I've stated very clearly, that is my speculation. Right? That is my belief. I didn't say it's a fact. The fact is only that there are reports that says that Omicron evolved because of HIV patients, because they are immunocompromised. And they suspect, not only me suspect, they suspect that Omicron happened in the HIV immunocompromised individuals. That is why you have so many mutations within a short period of time. Right? My only I would say I add on that, could it be possible if there was a combination? Because mutation can happen in 2 ways, right? It owns mutation, or it can recombine with other viruses, or even similar viruses with similar genetically similar. That's what we are seeing. The Delta clone, which is the Delta virus variant, Omicron, they combine, become a Delta clone. That is called recombination, right?
But don't you think that there's like a coronavirus family sort of extension of itself rather than two viruses?
It comes back to the finding that actually this COVID-19 virus actually have a few genes that is actually very similar to HIV genes. Right? That was actually
let me see. Let's see. Okay, let's see. So, okay. This medical journal says that in terms of similarities, they are not very similar, but they have some points in common. They cause fear in the population, existence of animal reservoirs, increased synthesis of pro-inflammatory cytokines, so they create inflammation. They modify your intestine microbiota, so your digestive tract. And lastly, they have neutrophil cellular traps formation. So in nowhere does it state that the genetic code is similar in any way, or the genome. No, SARS-CoV-2 does not contain HIV genetic code. Okay, blah blah blah. Talented professor, recipient of the Nobel Prize in 2008 for his discovery of HIV, SARS-CoV-2 would have been engineered and contained some of genes of HIV-1. On the French news channel, the researchers declared that we came to the conclusion that there was some manipulation around the virus to a part, but I do not say the total ... of the coronavirus of the bat. Someone added sequences, in particular HIV, the virus of AIDS. It is not natural, it's not a work of is the work of professionals of molecular biologists, a very meticulous work. Lots of people commented on this news here and there. Hypothesis. Let's start with the hypothesis that some nucleotide sequences of HIV-1 can be found in the complete genome of SARS-CoV-2. Analysis. If we look at the whole code here, given by NCBI, the whole code can be found here. Very nice. So this is literally the whole code, and all the peptides and everything else that you will be able to kind of see. So whatever gene, gene ORF7A, all the geneticists and biologists who are in this field will be able to kind of decipher all these kind of numbers and alphanumerical origins. Yep, this is the exact code of the COVID virus itself. So, the HIV is a retrovirus. It is an RNA virus that inserts a copy of its genome into the DNA of a whole cell it invades, thus changing the genome of that cell. It is transmitted as a single strand positive sense envelope virus packed into glycoprotein envelope. So while HIV has a DNA expression of itself, it is used for replication. It also has RNA code. Let's thus consider the complete genome of the RNA of the HIV, which is as follows. So basically the code that we saw just now and the code that's here, we cannot find fragments of the letter sequence. We can conclude that no part of HIV exists in SARS-CoV-2. So if you are really interested to see whether it makes sense or not, right, you can just Control F, paste the whole code, or paste bits of the COVID genome code into here, and then you can match up and see if there is any relevance to this HIV code, but they have not. So the only code that is quite similar based off this article is this COVID. So if you look at the envelope glycoprotein gene, it is quite similar, and that I think was the most or the main similarity between the two in terms of coding. But then again, it goes on to say that this is the same with the human coronavirus, which gives you the common cold, right? So does that mean the HIV was created also by someone who manipulated the cold virus? I don't think so, right? Doesn't make any sense. And I think the most important flaw of his finding was that the human coronavirus actually existed way long before the HIV did. So there's no way that this evolution of this COVID virus, right, which came from the 1950s, was made in 2019.
It was actually stated by the Nobel Prize winner, right? He stated that actually the reason why he said that he suspect this virus is from the lab is because this virus contains HIV genes. Sense. Right? Now, you talk about, they come up with a new booster, the second booster. It comes back to the finding that actually this COVID-19 virus actually has a few genes that is actually very similar to HIV genes. Right? That was actually very early in 2020. It was actually stated by the Nobel Prize winner. Right? He stated that actually the reason why he said that he suspect this virus is from the lab is because this virus contains HIV genes. I think 4 or 5 of them, similar genes in it. Right? That is why he believed that it comes from a lab. Because he believes that this type of combination, this type of structure cannot happen in nature. That was his reasoning. But nobody knows the truth. Of course, it was hantam by a lot of people that say rubbish, it cannot come from a lab and all that. Okay. So nobody actually really knows what this COVID-19 comes about, how it comes about, actually. Right? There is still a debate going on. Right? I would say that you're right. It is actually too fast to jump into conclusion that it is a combination of a HIV and the Delta virus or any other variants of COVID-19. Right? But the recombination, no matter how remote the possibility is, there's still a possibility. Just like we didn't expect Omicron to have so many mutations within such a short period of time. Everybody thought that the COVID-19 will have a slower evolution of mutation due to the track system that it has. That means you actually have a correct and kind of, right? That was a true reading system. But nobody expect Omicron to have such a massive mutation within such a short period of time. It didn't. Right? There are a few reports that comes in. Right?
So he then alludes to how the viruses kind of evolve, but then again he comes into my talking point where I'm just saying like it's just an evolution of itself rather than a combination of any virus, right? There's been no proof, there's been no evidence thus far to show that viruses can combine with each other like that, in that way. None.
So for me, if that is unknown yet, we really do not know what happened. But most probably I'm wrong.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, I stand corrected, right, for that. But on the other aspect of vaccine injuries and the safety and the usefulness of vaccine, right, it's a matter of opinion on how you look at it. Right? I think they are more concerned of me saying that the vaccine is useless. Right? Because when you have a national agenda of vaccine, a vaccination agenda, you want to get 100% vaccinated, right? And now booster, right? To say the vaccine is useless is actually quite damaging to their agenda. It's actually in collision with their narrative. But at this stand now, how many infections do we have? Booster or non-booster? Vax or non-unvax? The data is very clear. When you have a vaccine, the most useful vaccine is one that prevents infection and transmission. That's why we want a vaccine.
Right. For me, I think I kind of like disagree with that, because I don't think for the infectious rates, right, for vaccines itself is supposed to reduce it. It's more to kind of curb the symptoms that you're supposed to have.
Okay.
You could say that the efficacy has dropped a lot more from what it was supposed to be at. I think it was quite a high efficacy rate previously. But then the validity of those results, right, was based on like COVID-19 patients, whereas now it's in 2022, so the virus kind of mutate. They've developed a lot more spike proteins. Like for example, Omicron has about 30 over mutations on the spike protein.
Yes.
So if you were to use the same vaccine to compare the efficacy on a different sort of mutated virus, or I mean, obviously it would become less effective, don't you?
Different
Okay.
goalposts, right?
I will put the perspective this way. Now Omicron is 90% of infection, or even 100% in Singapore. So what is the good of the vaccine?
Because
But then it will never be that way, right? He's giving this hypothetical based on something that will never ever happen, which is, yes, I get that's the point of the hypothetical. But then in this instance where the infection rate is not 100% or not even close to 90% with the vaccine, I mean, if he's going to give me an example where I would have to kind of agree with, right, if we're talking about purely based off infection rates, then yeah, if the infection rate is 100% with the vaccine, then it would diminish its sort of appeal, but it doesn't diminish any of its functions, which is either way with the vaccine, right? You're still going to get it. 100% you're still going to be infected, but whether the infection is asymptomatic or not, that really depends. Because when we're talking about coronaviruses or viruses that are airborne, they will infect you through your eyes, your nose, and your mouth, right? Because it's mucous membrane kind of entrances. So unless you can keep all this closed, or you lock yourself down the whole day in your room every day for the rest of your life, they're bound to be infected. There's going to be some people, and then the R number for this virus is so high. So I don't really care if I'm infected. Everyone's going to get infected at one point. But what can that infection do to your body if you don't have these antibodies that is given by the vaccine? That is a problem, right?
It's meant to sort of reduce your symptoms, although it's not very effective at sort of targeting the spike protein, because the vaccine itself has only 1 out of 9 spike proteins. I'm talking about the Pfizer, I'm not sure about the other Oxford ones. So it's sort of rate of recognizing there's a foreign body in your
Correct. I mean, on the technical part,
it is also why I think
Understand.
they're making a new vaccine targeting the Omicron one.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
And that actually entirely kind of honed in on his point about, you know, what if this virus evolves, or what if this thing needs or just our vaccines are useless for the current evolution of where this virus trajectory is going, right? Then that's exactly why the new vaccines are coming out specifically to handle this variant, right? This Omicron variant, which is much different from, well, not that much different, but quite different from the original one, the original Alpha variant that the vaccine was based on.
Happens, right? When the vaccine first came out, the narrative is we will have herd immunity. If we have 50% or 70% vaccinated, that is the narrative. You go and check.
Well, I don't care what the narrative is, right? Like, who cares what the narrative is? We just want to know if whether this thing is going to work or it's not, right? Even with viruses in the past, herd immunity, how do you think that was reached when we had polio? We had to take all the vaccines to reach that. It wasn't just herd immunity from just doing nothing, right? Unless you want to talk about like the Spanish flu, where the vaccines weren't a thing back then. But with that, you had so many millions of deaths. You had lockdowns for ages on end, and it's just because it's not happening in our lifetime that you don't experience, or you don't know that the time scale of the lockdowns that we have are actually very short, right? Of course, they feel very long and it's a toll on your mental health, but back then, that was all that they could actually ever think about, was their own livelihood and their health, which was why they had to stay down there for so long. No real cause of concern for economies. The globalization wasn't that developed yet. So, yeah. Unless that's the outcome that you want, then get the fucking vaccine.
That was the narrative, right? Then any vaccinated person that got infected, they say there is a breakthrough infection, and blah blah, whatever reason they give, right? But when the times goes on, as the times goes on, what happened? They find that there are too many breakthrough infections. So they change the narrative to say that, getting infected is okay, right? Because, like what you say, less symptoms, less death, and all that, correct? Correct.
Yeah.
But later on, when new variant came in, Delta variant, the death rate went up, right? They still say that, you still lower the chance. Omicron came in, you will look at the data, between the vax and unvax, as I said, even with a selection bias, right? Actually, it's closing up. Correct?
Which data set are you looking for this one?
You will look at Singapore data set, right? Or you look at Israel data, the Scotland data set, right? You look at it. So, when you say a death,
So hold on.
like what you say, less symptoms, less death, and all that, correct? Correct?
Yeah.
But later on, when new variant came in, Delta variant, the death rate went up, right? They still say that, you still lower the chance. Omicron came in, you will look at the data, between the vax and unvax, as I said, even with a selection bias, right? Actually, it's closing up, correct?
Which data set are you looking for this one?
You will look at Singapore data set, right? Or you look at Israel data set.
Okay, let's look. So according to Goh Ming Singh, the Singapore data set for cases who died, right? It says closing up. Really? For 40 to 49, it only looks like the non-vaccinated are dying. 60 to 69, it looks like a huge of them are dying. Where the unvaccinated make up 2.4 of deaths, whereas the vaccinated with booster, I can't even 0.035%. So what is that ratio like? So how many much more times are they dying? Let's see. Okay, 0.035, right? Compared to 2.4. They're dying at a rate of 69 more times, Mr. Go. I think that's not very mild, as you would say, or catching up. 5.7 by 0.09. 62 times more. Okay, 13%, goddamn. And then I'll give you a chance. This is fully boosted without, fully vaccinated without booster. Okay, let's see. 2.9. Let's do 4.5 times chance of dying without the vaccine. So not even your own quoted statistics don't prove what you're saying, like.
Or the UK data set, the Scotland data set, right? You look at it. So when you say a death, right, we found something in common. The death are mostly the elderly or those who are above 50. With those who are below 50, actually almost no death, no percentage of death. So I want to ask you, regardless of our vaccination status, so why are you pushing everyone to take the vaccine when the death only occurs with people with a pre-existing condition and the elderly?
Because the death is just one consideration. There's a big consideration, right? Which he is also proven wrong, very very wrong in. I just showed you the numbers from the Singapore website itself. You can go do the same for UK and Austria. I'm 100% gonna tell you that it's gonna show the same thing. But then the other consideration is the incubation period, so that with the vaccination, your body is able to recognize it, able to curb it. You're not coughing everywhere. You're not symptomatic. So, and it lowers your viral load. One, and two is that the viral duration that you're having this viral load. So sorry, the duration that you're having this viral load with, right, is also shortened by like 50%. Besides that, also, if we want to keep our economies and business running, you would have to have less super spreaders, you have to have less infection rates, yada yada yada, which everything and all the evidences that are lined up shows a very very strong case for.
Very simple question. Right? Now you are looking at hospitalization, the ICUs. Take a look at Singapore's data. Someone just pointed out, right? Those who are, you say, wow, 75% are boosted, where our booster rate is about 70-75%. So is that an advantage at the moment?
Could it not be base rate fallacy, Mr. Go? Like, for example, if there is a huge pool, because now I think the vaccination rate in Singapore is like 95%, 98% of our total.
90, no, I think 94%.
94. So,
yeah.
Okay, this interview was taken on the 21st of March, right? So let me check. So it seems that 21st of March, we are both wrong. It's actually 93%. No, whatever.
With a huger pool or larger pool of people who are vaccinated, it's quite common to see more people who are showing in the ICU who are vaccinated, just on the basis that they are vaccinated.
Correct. No. Those who are boosted is 75%. But add on, who are fully vaccinated, not boosted, is more than that. You see? So by virtue, if you believe in selection bias, those who are unvaccinated is because they are concerned about their pre-existing condition. So naturally, they will go to the ICU also. So if you take that into consideration, by roughly you will see, what is our advantage? Right? I do not have a full data set. I do not have how many those were boosted or were fully vaccinated are actually with pre-existing condition. I do not have data. With that data, it's easier to make a fair comparison. But virtually, you talk about, they come out with a new booster, the second booster, so-called. No. By the time they come out with that, Omicron is all over. It's Delta Con. Or the Omicron 2 and Omicron 1 recombine again and become a new Omicron. So I want to ask you, where does it stop?
I don't think it will, because if you see like other vaccine, Hep B, BCG, when we're born, we still take it. For flu also, I just have my annual flu shot. These viruses won't die or won't go away. So
precisely. You're right on that. It will not stop. If we always think about vaccine, right? But for flu, it's the same. You will always think about using vaccine to control flu. Every year you have to take a shot. But this vaccine, this COVID-19 is even jalan, no? Every 6 months you have a booster. Right? Does it really make sense?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We were shocked.
Because the efficacy rate of the vaccine show to sort of wane off at the 6 months. So if your whole problem or your whole narrative is the vaccine isn't effective, then you want to continuously take it so that it still remains of a high efficacy rate, right? So obviously it makes sense. You think all the companies and all the governments are just paying to waste their money and to freeze it and to have all these logistic costs, all this demand and supply nonsense to go on to jab us continuously for fun? Come on now.
With a short period of time for jab and jab, actually it will create more harm to your immune system. This is not what I say. This is actually one of the doctors in Singapore who say.
I know exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about ADE, right? ADE is this like adaptation disorder where your body gets so used to a vaccine that it doesn't become useful anymore. But as you know, this is very, very rare cases. It's so rare and it's so negligible at this point that it's much, much better to take that risk than to not. Okay, and I'll show you some statistics as to why. From Matt Page today, so far there's been no reports of ADE with COVID vaccines. And although this scenario may happen, it's very unlikely. But most of the scientists who worked on it found that it's a non-issue because they already tested this on animals. And in the animal trials, they were looking at different approaches to how to build this vaccine, right? As you know, you have the EUA prescribed to kind of quicken things up, hurry up the processes, clinical trials, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. What they've done is they looked at different spike proteins and manipulation of those spike proteins or targeting the nucleoprotein. Any of those that give off the probability of ADE were quickly abandoned and other methods were sought to figure out how we could be able to retrieve this protein which was safe or have really, really low likelihoods of ADE. So with this current state of what we have now, right, you cannot use the whole reasoning of ADE as a fear or as a way to maneuver out of getting the vaccine because it has not been proven yet. And if there was a risk, if there was even a 1% risk, this would be showing up in all of the vaccinated people already, but it has not. So
because it's exhaustion is you exhaust your ADE, it becomes ADE. Now, if your purpose is to cut down symptoms, cut down hospitalization, is there have any other alternative?
Not pill.
Or we have to do research, right? The Chinese have done their own research. They believe, you don't believe, that's fine. Right? But I believe the research because they are more gassy than us. That's why they have COVID-0 policies. Right? It's not 100% proof, but at least it will reduce further the chances of getting seriously ill. So
the same can be said about taking the vaccines, Mr. TCM.
My point is this, I'm not anti-vax, I've taken my vaccine. If I go to India, I will take my hepatitis vaccine and all that. Chinese vaccination, first of all, is new technology. Secondly, no long-term data on efficacy and safety. Efficacy, we already know. It's screwed up every 6 months because the virus mutate faster than the vaccine can produce. Right? That's given. It's okay. Right? Taking an ineffective vaccine is okay, to me. What I'm more concerned is the long-term impact of the vaccine.
I have been wholly debunked already. Okay? The vaccine has been here for 3 years. So the reason why I didn't really cut him off here is that I feel he may disagree with what my version of long term is, right? Or everyone's version of long term. If we know that the vaccine is very sensitive, okay, it needs a temperature of -2 degrees with all the additives and ingredients in the bottle itself to keep the bacteria and spike protein alive. How long more would you really need to see it dissolve in your body? Okay, to me it's just a matter of months or a year at most, because by then I'm already clear. I'm well known that if let's say the efficacy drops off at 6 months, right? I well know already the damages or the side effects that it could cause wouldn't be related to the vaccine after those couple months anymore. Next is also in regards to how your body metabolizes this vaccine itself, right? As soon as it goes into your arm and you have the sore arm, your body is actively clearing out this vaccine as soon as you take it. As soon as you take it. Once you enter any foreign object or you enter any foreign cells or items or introduce anything foreign in there, your body's immediate reaction is to wake up its immune system, send the killer T cells, B cells, memorize what's going on, create antibodies, and then so that the next time it happens again, it will be less severe. Okay, and with that being said, if it only takes like a few days or weeks to kind of remove that foreign vaccine or foreign spike protein that's in your body replicating through your ribosomes, then what other long-term effects are there? There are none so far that we can see the vaccine. None. And it's already been 3 years, so how long more are you going to wait? How much more data do you need to see? It's so clear at this point already. So clear. What about the vaccine long-term? If you're going to say like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 100 years data you're waiting for, some of the vaccines that we're taking don't even have such a long time frame to study. In fact, our annual flu shot every year that we're taking, right, is not based off any long-term data at all, you know. Every year we create a new flu vaccine. It's a new flu vaccine. It has no basis or no long-term data that you can rely on, but yet we still take it. Yet we don't run away and say, oh, this is new, so we need long-term data on this. No.
Because nobody have a long-term data. Anyone who tell you that they have long-term data, they're bullshit, right? Especially for new technology, right? So where does it lead us to? We should actually diversify our effort. If we really find that there's no light at the end of the tunnel of vaccination, and our purpose is not to kill the virus because it's going to live with us, right? So we have to think just like the flu. Some people will prefer to take the vaccine, it's fine, right? But there are people who have their own remedies. So when we come to this stage, come to the real realization that vaccine is not going to be a foolproof way, and there are risks of ADE, there are risks of hurting our immune system in the long run if we keep taking jab every 6 months or even 3 months, then we have to shift. The paradigm have to shift, because if you carry on this way, you are going to lead the 100% or 95% of Singaporeans into some unknown territory, you know, which risks that nobody knows. Even the Britons, the Americans are actually, the Europeans are very careful about it right now. Right? So I believe there is no reason for us to stick to vaccination agenda. It is time to actually move on, spend more funds and resources to look for a remedy. We may not so-called kill the virus.
I'm so thankful that this man hasn't been anywhere as influential as he has hoped to be for Singapore. Thank God we have not got him into Parliament. Thank God he has not held any high positions. I just thank whoever, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, I thank them every day.
But enhance our immune system to deal with the infection. Right? I think that it should be the direction that we go in. That is what I believe. Because vaccination also aims to boost up your immune system to fight the virus. Vaccination doesn't give you so-called the cure. It never gives you the cure.
Exactly. So why can't it be both? Like, why can't I use the vaccine to boost my natural immunity and also take precautions for my own health in regards to physical activity, human
because,
behavior?
as I have said, there's no long-term data of safety.
Same with COVID though, right?
Yeah, true. Right. And the world data, the people are shown that.
So if same with COVID, then, and we know that COVID is worse than the vaccine, what the fuck are you doing? Just take the vaccine, bruh.
So many different types of side effects.
Yeah.
And we should be very careful about it. You know, last time when I was in to be frank with you, I was in the pharmaceutical companies doing research, but not this type of research, more on the market research and all that. Whenever we have an interview with a doctor, for example, and or nurse or anyone who mentioned that if he takes a certain brand of medication and that some incident happened, we have to take adverse event report. That's how stringent that we took about side effect. But somehow, this COVID, we are throwing all this at the back of our mind. Never mind if you die, it's not the vaccine. What makes you think? What makes you make that claim by not even understanding the vaccine itself? Because nobody really understanding what the vaccine will do to the body. So I'm very, as a data person, I was wow. I said, how can that be? If safety is paramount in any drugs or any medical intervention we call to our health, we have to take every report very seriously, not just brushing them aside like that. It's quite horrible to me.
I think the government does it though, because they actually do cover your medical bills if you have side effects or if you are ill from this vaccine. I know one of my friends who had, I think a blood clot or something because of the vaccine, and it was all covered by.
I thought, everything is good and fine. And when some people come hit, it's not all people who are affected by the vaccine are taken care of. There are people who are paralyzed to some people, but I don't believe the numbers are so small in vaccine injuries.
Then that's your fault.
Because it's not comparable to the world data. This is science. What happens in Europe, what happens in US?
Why happens something that happens in one region compared to the world data? Why? What's the point?
In Singapore.
So if it doesn't, it doesn't. Then what if the world data for AIDS is 500 per 1,000 or per 1 million people? Then in Singapore also must be 500 per 1 million people. No, right?
By proportion. Right? How can you say there's no death from vaccination when there are death from vaccination in other places? That's not science. That's not logical. Like statistically, it doesn't stand. Like if a person will believe in data and science, you will have second thought. What is going on? Very simple. Right? So I do not know. I will not say that all the injuries, all the incidents after vaccination are due to vaccines. But the numbers are too massive for me because when they don't take care of that, they make noise in the chat group and all that. And every time I see it, initially I was telling people, make an informed choice. I'm not against. But when the government actually start to deny claims, or even the doctors themselves refuse to sign off that is potential vaccine injuries, right? Then there is a right to tell people that be cautious. Right? And I do not know, if you are not in Singapore, you are not aware that there is another group that monitors ambulances sightings. And the sightings are terrible. It's quite high for a small observers of less than 1,000 people. Every day, 100 sightings, 50 to 100 sightings. It has never, we noticed, I was the first to notice this. Because last time when we drive, hardly see any ambulance. But nowadays, every day, I can see ambulance going on.
What the fuck? Oh, ambulance means COVID vaccine shit.
Sometimes 8 or 9 ambulances in a day while I was driving on the road. What does it mean? Then we come back, we look at the data, then the government were telling us, hospitalization due to COVID-19 is actually 1,000 plus stabilized. So I was asking myself, then where does this ambulance cater to?
Go and follow.
I think it could be other disease or interventions. No, not interventions, sorry, like accidents.
Yeah.
Could be stroke.
Yes.
If you look at the statistics, every Chinese New Year, our stroke and heart attack rates go quite high. Whether
No.
anything.
No, your mother can't show you. Okay, SG stroke registry annual report. Okay, look. Number of strokes 2018 to 2021, 60 years and above, right? January, February, when does it take off? When does the increase come? Increase in boom, Feb, increase in boom, Feb, March, and then it peaks off in April. Sorry, it dwindles down from April. So when is Chinese New Year? Everybody out there gambling, everybody out there eating everybody out there gambling, everybody out there smashing, everybody out there eating all the nonsense. Obviously, we're gonna have high stroke incidence rate. No.
The highest death rate.
On MOH, you can see also. Hold on.
The highest death rate, I'm talking about death rate. The highest death rate
then now he pivots to death rate.
is actually December.
But later you see how he changes again.
You talk about death rate or ambulance?
Ambulance, I do not know. Okay? Ambulance, I do not know. I have not seen the data yet.
When I'm studying death rate.
But it had come to the point that they actually admitted the ambulance call actually increased by 20 to 30%.
I thought he said he don't know about ambulance, and now he gave me the statistic 20%. So you know or don't know?
Is that because of specifically because of COVID or vaccine related or?
Well, if they are telling us that, if the data shows us that hospitalization for COVID is actually quite stable now, 1,003 to 1,006, very small range. Where is the access? Where does the access come from?
Not from COVID lah. Fuck.
Right?
It's hard to make that claim, right? Because it's not.
Yeah, it's hard to make that claim. I'm not making a claim. I'm making an observation.
Next.
I'm actually making an observation. Right? It is a strange thing that we cannot explain, but it's an observation that we meet
We can explain
on the roads. Actually, I don't drive often. One day,
you just go and search causes of death, top 10 in Singapore. It's mostly unchanged lah.
an hour, right? I don't drive often nowadays because unvexed I cannot go anywhere. So it's a strange part. Right? Of course, hospitalization actually increased. So they claim that, it's due to past chronic diseases, who are hospitalized, although they are infected, but it's not due to the infection, but due to their chronic diseases. Okay, that's how you define, you define, that's why your COVID hospitalization actually quite stable. Right? And it's the fact that they say, the hospital are still packed, that's why they cannot allow people to go to hospital to visit. Just a week ago, they are making that statement. So where does this come from? These people, I don't know. Right?
I also don't know. Then you say
Maybe it's dengue fever, maybe other things we do not know, because dengue fever is actually an endemic in Singapore, right? So we do not know what happened. We have to look at the data again about the death, because funerals also went up, right? Because people are observing the crematory booking are always full, and people are observing that funeral wakes are everywhere in Singapore, right? So please, we have to wait for the data. ICA is supposed to have the data, the quarterly data, right? So we have to explain certain things like excess death.
But you mentioned that, now with the new variant and also cause vaccine or whatever, whatever the cause may be, the infections have been increasing, but the death and the cases of ICU have been decreasing, right? The severe symptoms and the death rate has been decreasing from COVID for the newer variant.
Yes.
So
for the newer, we hopefully will see the trend continue. If the newer variants comes in,
the increase of death rate that's happening now shouldn't be ascribed to the COVID itself, because if you agree that the death rate has been falling from COVID cases because of the newer variants and it become less harmful,
then from where?
Then it could be something else, because this is not very controlled for. There's no description of cause of death.
But if you have noticed recently, there's a lot of reports of sudden death, right? Such a high intensity. There are sudden death in the past, no doubt about it. Once in a while, we will see people having heart attack. Sudden death, most probably. I'm not drawing any conclusion. It's an observation that is of concern. Right? Of course, people are drawing when the booster comes in and how the death comes in. Even in US, there are people who collected data because of insurance company. They are finding that excess death is 49% more for the past year. They are concerned because they have vested interest, because they are paying the insurance for sudden death. Right? That is why the fund, the investor, the famous fund manager, what's his name again? He was predicting the 4 statistics, right? Each year, what's the death numbers? Then we calculate, then we can make money. That's how insurance works, right? But suddenly they find that they're losing a lot of money because of the sudden spike in death. So they're finding a reason. Well, we have to wait now. We have to wait. What are the findings in the US? But for me, is if I have an alternative and I have doubts on the vaccination, not only the efficacy but now the safety, especially when the Pfizer documents came out, right? I would actually have a paradigm shift to see how can I improve certain aspect of the immune system of the population, so that they will get infected. Right? We will get infected, but we have less symptoms, we have less concern, we have less hospitalization. Instead of every day talking about vaccine, I think that's crazy. Right? Yeah, you're not thinking.
That's funny though, because who's talking about vaccine every day? You You see your Facebook page.
In a holistic perspective of the whole situation. That's how I see things. I'm not an expert. I'm not trained. But as a person who look at data and the data trend, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned about all these happenings around us. But of course, my family are not vaxxed. We have to suffer the inconvenience. Right? But there are families who cannot afford to be unvaxxed, even if they have concerns. They will lose their jobs. And I think that is evil. If you promise people that nobody should be forced to be vaxxed, and it's a choice, it's not a mandate, you should not have done that. Right? You're basically pushing people to the cliff and not giving them a choice. That's why I'm against the methodology they use. And after having achieved 94%, 95%, after using such static and pushing for booster more than 70%, we are still not improving. We're still having 7,000, 10,000 infection numbers. And our hospitals are still packed. And there are still people dying. So where does it lead us to? Does it make sense to force young people with strong immunity who hardly have any death for vaccination? Our focus should be on people with pre-existing condition. Right? That we know, by now we should know that the infection are those with pre-existing condition, diabetic especially.
From what I see in terms of why the government is trying to do this is for a few things. Like, one would be the relative risk. I would see it as they are more concerned of the virus rather than the side effects of the vaccines. And the second one would be, for instance, the prioritization on kids and on the youth to get the vaccines is to ensure that there's no more super spreader events. So, for example, yes, it doesn't. If you have to compare a 75-year-old versus someone like me who's in my 20s, obviously we have to prioritize the 75-year-old, or there's much more rational reason to give the vaccine to the 75-year-old than to me. But for me, I'm a living, contributing member of society. If I go out to work, if I go into many places, I might get the vaccine. And in Singapore, there's a lot of houses which are, stayed in with multiple family members. So I could spread it to my father, I could spread it to my grandfather. So even though, yes, my elderly population may have been vaccinated, but if I am not vaccinated and I get the vaccine, if I get the virus, I'm still very much liable to get very sick or extend my incubation period with the virus that may affect my parents or may affect my grandparents. And I think for the last point is mostly in sort of this kind of thinking of alternatives, right? I don't really see how, if let's say we don't use certain vaccines or certain mask mandates to force or encourage people to take care or be more cautious with their behavior, the other alternative to me is just lock everybody down, shut off everybody from leaving the house. Because how would you go about managing such a...
Okay.
Yeah.
What you say here makes sense if and only if the vaccine works to stop transmission and infection.
But it's not the point of the vaccine, though.
No, wait. You're talking about you do not want to bring the virus back to your house and infect your older people, members of your family.
Yeah.
But the vaccine cannot fulfill that.
True, but it reduces your incubation period with the virus. So, for instance, if I'm asymptomatic with the COVID virus and I'm coughing and sneezing everywhere, the vaccine helps me to become more non-symptomatic. So you could see how it doesn't spread as much.
Yes and no. Okay. This is my personal experience. It might not be indicative, but from a small samples that I had, I have people who are vaccinated, booster, and unvaxxed who have infection. Right? Some are unvaxxed because of their pre-existing condition. Right? They do have bad cough, sore throat. Right? But they normally recovers after 6 or 7 days. Right? There are certain unvaxxed people, if they apply the early treatment, all these are applied early treatment, so there's no differential. Right? 1 day of cough, and that's it. But they will only test negative on the 4th day. Right? Some of the vax and boosted also can recover, right, on the 4th day if they take the early treatment. But for those who didn't take the early treatment, what happened was they will test negative on the 6th day, right? But they continue to cough. It is strange. So it is to what I see is it all depends on your endowment, your body endowment of immune system. If your immune system is good, regardless of whether you're vaxxed or not, you'll hardly be affected by Omicron. And now stands the Delta is more serious, right? The Delta is more serious. Omicron and now it stands. So whether vaccine actually reduce your incubation period, right? We have no data to establish that yet. Of course, there are certain initial findings and all that, but that is in conclusion. In conclusion, as I said, random control trial is very hard to come by, right? Because a lot of factors affect whether you take treatment, what type of treatment you take, early intervention, and all that, right? But I have to say that whether you are vaxxed or unvaxxed, early treatment actually helps. The most early that you get your treatment, the better it is, right? I have people who have serious have lasted more than 10 days.
Yeah,
they still have symptom of cough and phlegm. Difficult to conclude that. I can only conclude that early treatment is important. Anything bad or good, I cannot conclude. Right? That's my. There's even one who say that he had pre-existing condition. He was taking vitamins before. Because you know that you have pre-existing condition, you take. So I would not say it's foolproof, but it does help if you have. Even you will take supplements like vitamin D, vitamin C, or zinc before that. Right? It does help. Right? But whether it will be better for them to take vaccine or not, there's no if. Right? There's no if, because that is what they experience. I can only say that even when they're unvaxxed, if you really boost your immune system, keep it top peak, you can actually write out this infection.
I agree. Like I think that I think what we could agree on, taking care of your health, making sure you got enough nutrition.
Infection. Right? Whether you're vaxxed or not. Right? So we have got, as far as I'm concerned, in Singapore, already 94% been vaxxed. And out of this, 70% have been boosted. Vaccination or not is not even an issue to me anymore. People have made their choice, right? And of course, whatever comes, whether good or bad, we have to manage, okay? But now is how are we going to face in this phase when, regardless of vaccine or not, you will still get infected? How do we minimize hospitalization, regardless of vaccination, and the ICU and death? That's why I'm promoting early intervention. We have to go into that direction. Right? Although Omicron is mild, so-called mild, but it's not that mild. Right? If you experience the sore throat without medication, you are going to suffer a lot.
Pneumonia, fatigue.
Yeah, pneumonia. Yeah. So I believe we can agree to disagree to a certain extent about the vaccine, but that is actually past. To us to move forward, I think we have to actually think of ways to actually strengthen the majority of Singaporeans, especially those older people, their immune system. And we have to come to take the experiences of other people. Right? Vitamin D is important because most of the cases of death or serious ICU, we found that they are lacked in two things. One, vitamin D, low in the vitamin D, and the other one is zinc. Right? So maybe it's a good idea to actually keep some certain supplement like this for the older people. Because by virtue, when they are old and during COVID, you don't want them to go out. They don't have sunshine.
Yeah.
There will be a deficiency in their vitamin D. So I think that is important. Right? That's how I view it. That's why when my early treatment protocol comes out, it's not since Taiwan, you know. I've thought through what I've read, what are deficient. There might not be any correlation or any causation, but the correlation is so obvious, so strong that we take precaution, we take vitamin D. Since the doctor says that all of these serious illness are short in vitamin D, then we supplement it. But old people, you cannot expect them every morning go out to get sunshine, right?
Yeah.
Right? So it might not be a perfect thing, but it is the best thing I can come up with at this moment. Of course, the Chinese medication, MOH also got something to say about it, right? But the fact that in the very beginning they are interested in that study, to commission a study on the 莲花清瘟, it shows that they themselves actually felt it might help, although it doesn't materialize to a full study. So what? As long as it doesn't kill people. And the market, if you believe in market forces, the market speak the truth. But that's market forces, right? So far, so good. I'm happy to say that if it is in shortage, it means that it works. No?
No, not true. Ivermectin also was having shortages, but none of them supposed to work. Been proven time and time again, ivermectin does not work. So what I think he's on, right, is he has probably taken some bribes or taken some money and has vested interest in TCM, or maybe he himself runs a TCM center. And that's why he's so insistent on like TCM medicine working, and probably in the groups that you follow, he will recommend certain medicine or certain clinics to check out. And I think if we actually dive deeper into it, if we want to, right, we can actually probably see that he has a strong monetary interest in pushing this TCM. He's a grifter lah, basically.
So if you ask me, how did I come to that conclusion to sell? Like, this one could call it. I don't believe you can cure. But if I have alternative
about the vaccine and whether it works, whether it doesn't, blah blah blah. I think also people want to know, like, how is it like living with all these restrictions that is placed upon you? Because I know, regardless of what you view the vaccine as, whether it works or the science around it, you are still human. You know, you still have feelings. People come and criticize you, They will say a lot of nasty things about you. They will you can't even go out in public or into shopping malls unless you need to see your doctor or special reason. You're barred from workplace. So how is this impacting you and your family? And moving forward, what do you think, or how do you think you can manage this living in Singapore?
It's true. Okay. First of all, I'm a simple man. I hardly shop. Even before the COVID, going to shopping mall is only for dining mostly. I don't do window shopping. So, of course, my daughter and my wife will be affected more lah. Because inconvenience, I think, is against opinions. And are sure due to the vaccine. No, even I don't believe that. Never seen that. Some of that I don't even know. What infringement of human rights? What is a human rights? The right to live. The right to earn a living, decent living.
Yeah, but the right to live doesn't include being a bioterrorist to everyone around you. So
You're infringing people's human rights. Like concern of public concern, public health concern. They have this judgment, and not only I have this concern, I also have a perspective of how to deal with the pandemic. As I told you, I will not force everybody to take the vaccine, but I will strongly encourage people to take care of their body immune system on the vaccine while have least risk of death or serious illness for the infection. It doesn't make sense. To me, it doesn't make sense. And what I have, instead of cherry pick and piece up just to their risk, send it like a randomized trial, control trial data, right? And honest of the deficiency our data. Are we going to have jab every 3 months, 6 months? Is this the way to go?
yes.
Like, a lot of experts say this is not the way to go, because you were
Yeah, but then okay, you see, within the hierarchy of evidence, right? Your doctors and scientists' medical opinion is here, followed by case study, case reports, cohort studies. Then we have more distinct control study, control trial, randomized control trial, and then systematic review and meta-analysis. So you're giving me the bottom barrel evidence to justify your claims, whereas we have a mountain of evidence which disproves what you're saying already. So your I don't know what 5-10% of the doctors versus thousands of actual academic research.
you make your immune system too busy, too exhaustive, and you become ADE.
Never happened
Right?
before.
You also know about this, right? It's not a secret, right? This is not the way to go. Then what's next? Does it actually make sense to victimize the unvaxxed without any scientific basis? You know, why is it without any scientific basis? The unvaxxed doesn't transmit the virus faster and more widespread than the vax right now.
Yeah, but they die more.
Right? That's what the data says. Right?
They
The
get sick
unvaxxed
more
doesn't
sick
suffer
illnesses,
more than
ICU,
the vax or the boosted people,
cost a lot more money to keep alive.
because they
All
have underlying
machines,
condition.
very expensive.
What they
all
need
tax
is
money.
actually to enhance their immune system by supplements and whatever
Well,
early transmission or infection. We are just like them. Disobedient? It's not. It's just because we are concerned of
At this point, right, it was already an hour plus, nearly 2 hours into the interview. You can tell by my face I'm very done. I just wanted to go out. I just wanted to get late. I just wanted to do something fucking else besides talking to him about this never-ending topic. I thought we already left it, about 20-30 minutes ago. He was saying, yeah, we can agree to disagree. Then later he brings up this point again. I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't want to get into another whole debate talking about this whole shit again. So you can imagine why I'm doing this video now.
health. That's number one. Most people who are unvaxxed have pre-existing condition. My family is actually the rare one, right? They have serious allergies. We are not recognized. Doctors do not want to give them exemption, right? There are people who have chronic illnesses. They are concerned.
Yeah,
Rightfully,
then
they
if
should
this
be.
were the case, then don't take. But how
These are
can
the
your whole
people.
family be that way?
Who will resist to be so well? Right? They will not solve the hospital problem. Look at the data. Does it make sense?
Makes sense.
Study. And what is the best way forward? They will go out in the parks or go to house and gathering and all that.
What is the best way forward for you and your family then in this instance? If let's say the government doesn't repeal these very restrictive measures, do you see yourself coping well mental health wise? I know it's going to be huge toll on you. There's going to be a lot of struggles doing things here and there, but you are quite strong to stick to your principles and your beliefs about the vaccine. So moving forward in the long term, do you still see yourself not taking the vaccine and just remaining as status quo? Or yeah.
Okay. First of all, when I look at this virus, and from the historical perspective, right, it will not last more than 3 years. That happened to Spanish flu, which doesn't have a vaccine. Right? It will die off from 3 years because that's
The best thing about this, right, is the Spanish flu lasted way longer than 3 years. And also, the best thing about this was all the predictions that he was about to predict, right, came, I think, 1 week or a few days before Lee Hsien Loong gave his speech about relaxing the COVID measures. And like in there, right, I also asked Mr. Goh what his prediction was. Was Singapore going to reduce these measures or were they going to keep it? And then all the predictions he made, right, were all just fucked up.
nature. Then the nature will have it mutate to be less fatal, right? But more transmissive maybe, endemic. Really endemic. That's what Omicron is moving towards. So I do not believe the PAP will be the sore thumb that's stuck out in the world. Right? When other places start to relax, to treat as endemic, truly endemic, I do not believe PAP will stick to this forever. Right? That's number one.
If it does, what would you consider as a bad?
You will lose power. Right? Because, frankly speaking, all these measures doesn't affect those unvaxxed right now. We have chosen our path, and if you carry on to have this inconvenience to us, it will not affect us because we are still alive. Simple, right?
No.
Who does it affect? It
affects the working class, but obviously not applying so much to you because you are rich and you're not really affected by this because your money and the wealth that you built up in your career, thankfully non-politically, has afforded you a fate where you are able to live your life, without much disruptions because you have the money to do so. But what about the people who don't want to take the vax and who listen to you, who are poor, who have to work? They have to be sacked by the managers. They have to risk getting ill, getting sick, dying, all because of your conspiracy theories. Hope you sleep well at night, though.
fully vaxxed but not boosted. And those boosted were required to take a second booster. Right? So it will not last. It shouldn't last beyond June, the way I see it.
Okay, so it's about nearly 2 months before June. All of the unvaccinated measures still apply to today. If you're unvaccinated, you can't go out, can't go to malls, can't see your friends, can't dine in, yada yada yada. Still the same. So, and it's been a month since I had this interview with him. Nothing has changed. It's gonna be about a month and a half until June is here, and I'm guaranteeing you nothing's gonna change either.
But if he does, then life still goes on for me.
So
if I'm not affected now,
so you're undeterred by this?
I'm deterred. No? Well, as I said, not many people can be in my position to afford to do this. Right? It's not easy.
Yeah.
Right? Worst come to worst, I will just leave the country.
Oh.
Where a lot of more well-to-do PMAP, those are more especially are leaving the country because of this. Right? They know it. So they are gradually complaining about this. On and on, you will read about this. They are just not talking about it openly. Imagine if all the world open and Singapore is not open, will they come to Singapore? These are well-to-do, very mobile talent. Why would they subject to this nonsense? Go in by step.
Because they are quite well educated. In the first place, the amount of immigrants we bring in is quite high, and those that are coming here, with the hopes of seeking employment would obviously want to abide by the country's laws, and those that are actually able to get employment passes here must, besides the migrant workers, must be quite high up there in their qualifications. They must be quite highly educated, so those kind of people would normally already be getting the vaccine, Mr. Goh, because they know better.
Always reflect, what if you're wrong? The implication, the impact will be so much bigger.
No.
And do not,
even if the vaccine was still useless, right? Look at the cases right now. Look at the cases before vaccines, and look at how much that has changed, how different that is in terms of severity deaths. Look at how in the ICU, the vaxxed and unvaxxed, even if this whole vaccine was not as accurate or not as effective as what we thought it would be, right? It's still overall net positive one.
try to justify or give excuse to every happening. Right? Just like what we are talking about, the excess death. I do not know what is happening. Do not brush it aside. Right? Don't speculate. Even experts will speculate. No, don't do that. Be scientific in what you do. Can keep them calm and consult other doctors. Right? I think they appreciate it because they are not to vex. Right? You took the supplement and you choose to believe in me to take the early treatment, and you're okay right now.
Believe in him.
So,
I think I'm done, guys. The analysis of this whole statement, I think I debunked every argument that he made. Take care.